Well, folks, thanks for joining us again, Stockwell Day at the Day-to-Day show, and we're going to be looking again at stories with some behind-the-scenes angles that you won't get from mainstream media. So let's jump right in and looking at some economic numbers that are just out. We're hearing a lot about Canadians should be having elbows up. And let's just fight back on the U.S. side. And look, I don't like these tariffs any more than anybody else does. But I have been saying for some time, as have others, that our economic policies may be not building confidence among Canadians as much as the elbows up cry would like to show. Recent stats just out now, these are June statistics, and this is from the National Bank, showing investment flows and showing net investment flows out of Canada, foreign investments into stocks and bonds, and brace yourself, Canadian investors investing increasingly in U.S. stocks and bonds. So elbows up does not seem to be working. Why is that? Why is confidence seeming to drop in the Canadian economy? Well, you can't run a country with fiscal policies like the federal Liberals are doing under Mark Carney, where you're vague on things like reducing debt, where you are vague and not doing much, if anything, on tax reductions. So very little being announced in anything that's going to encourage production. And you certainly can't have the type of social and environmental policies that simply don't work and will not build a strong economy. So we're concerned. Not good to see Canadians investing more out of the country. $8.3 billion net outflow in June, more into U.S. stocks and bonds. I'd suggest that Mr. Carney start to listen to Pierre Poilievre, who's coming up with good ideas relative to the economy, and stop listening to people on the extreme and even the moderate left-hand side of the equation with items and policies that are only hurting us. And talking about policies that are hurting us, I've touched on the environmental policy writ large that Canada has, which is to just sit on the most productive and the most wonderfully refined energy products probably anywhere in the world. We have a significant surplus. And here we have an international world problem with a war that is being launched, as we know, by Russia into Ukraine. And that war is being financed, ironically, by the same EU leaders who are wanting to see peace, as all of us do. And they're financing it by the fact that they continue to buy Russian oil and gas. Not only is it the EU, but we see it also with countries like India. India is buying energy product, oil and gas from Russia in huge amounts because India needs refined oil and gas products, the kind Canada has, but we won't allow it to be moved across the country to those people and nations that are in dire need. And not only is India buying and supporting the Russian war effort, they actually are reselling some of that oil and gas product onto the international market. It just does not make sense. Canadian oil and gas products are being hemmed in, and let's be honest by this, by liberal policies which are beholden to now disproven so-called environmental studies. And also, they are beholden to certain premiers who do not want oil and gas to flow across their provinces in very safe pipelines, even though some of these provinces, Quebec being one, is still importing Saudi oil. But we sit on our oil and gas, which could be literally saving the world and lowering emissions in the process, because we're helping countries to get away from their own dependency on coal, in many cases, coal in huge amounts, and dependency on the Russian dictator who's literally threatening world peace. I just think I can't emphasize this enough. What will our kids ask us? What will our kids and grandkids say to us years from now when it's obviously and revealed to them that here was Canada sitting on its own beautiful oil and gas refined products that could help bring peace to the world, that could undermine the dictators that are invading other countries, but we won't do it because there's still people who hang from bridges in their green attempt to use outdated scientific studies to try and terrify us and terrify Canadians and politicians who have completely lost their spine on this, and take away from the ability and the real potential that Canadians could have in really helping the world at a very important time, and incidentally, tremendously boosting our own economy, which is filled with fear about the future. Folks, tell your member of parliament, tell people who are concerned, your elected people, that we've got to start using our heads and our hearts and helping the world with our own energy, oil and gas, beautifully refined products. We've got a situation right now where this gentleman may or may not be a household name, and I use the word gentleman very carefully. Lawrence Bishnio is the name of a guy, a terrible, terrible criminal who's in a Canadian jail right now. But he controls a terror network of, at least it's estimated by police and intelligence forces, of probably 700 activists, criminal activists around the world, in a cause to do with issues in India, nothing to do with Canada. These people are known to be not just extortionists, they are known to be murderers, they are known to be killers, and this Bishnoi sits in our jails waiting further charges. And we have a number of individuals and organizations, including the leader of the opposition in Canada, asking the federal Liberals to designate Bishnoi and his group as a terrorist entity. Once you designate a group as a terrorist entity, you can do more and be far more effective in terms of closing down their networks, closing down their financial networks. The federal Liberals, once again, protecting the worst people, protecting people who are proven to be murderers and killers. I'm sorry if this sounds like hyperbole, but it is not. And it's ridiculous. Day after day, the stories keep coming out about federal Liberals protecting the worst, protecting the criminal element when they could be protecting innocent people. I can recall when I was leader of the opposition and we had to work very hard, and eventually were successful, this is back in 2002, to finally get the federal Liberals of that day. Jean Chrétien was refusing to declare Hezbollah as a terrorist entity. The rest of the world had declared Hezbollah a terrorist entity. Jean Chrétien refused to do that until we put huge pressure on him, eventually right up to the day of holding a news conference with some people who had been horrendously affected by Hezbollah, and then the Liberals reluctantly gave in on it. What is with Liberal policy that they consistently want to protect the worst, the most violent, the most egregious criminals and go after innocent people? Let's put pressure on them to see that change. Right along those lines, there's a recent case, and you may have seen this in the news, where in Ontario, an intruder broke into somebody's house at 3 o'clock in the morning. This intruder, now we know, was a criminal, has a criminal record. And in the ensuing scuffle and fight that went on, whoever lived in the home, the occupant, was able to subdue this criminal who'd broken into the house at 3 in the morning. And I'm sure you already know it. Guess who's being charged? The occupant of the home is being charged with using excessive force. I don't know what goes through the mind of the people who do the charging. How are you supposed to be determining? Picture yourself in this condition. Someone breaks in your house at 3 a.m. You lunge at him or do what needs to be done to intercept him, and the whole time you're saying, "I wonder, am I being too harsh on him? Am I using too much strength? Am I using excessive force?" No, you do what has to be done to protect your home and to protect your family. And in this case, the homeowner is being charged. It's good to see Premier Ford really upset and livid about this. But Premier Ford, you can change laws in your own province to tilt the balance back towards the innocent, back towards those who are trying to protect their homes. And now we know, again, federal Liberal policy when it comes to criminal justice issues, they're light on this. They're always wanting to protect the worst and go after the most law-abiding. But, something has to be done on this. So Premier Ford, we're with you. We're upset too, but change your laws. And while we're doing that, listen to the head of the Toronto Police Force. This is the Toronto Police Chief who's looking at the federal Liberal policy on, I guess, swooping across the country to try and deal with gun owners who are law-abiding citizens. And at the same time, when we catch the ones who are using guns to kill and destroy, very little is done in terms of getting really serious about the crime that those people are bringing in. Let's take a look at that. Municipal elections are coming up across the country, and it's a time for constituents in any number of these cities to look at their mayors, whoever the mayor it might be, and say, is the mayor and the council really putting in place the type of policies that are making for a safer, more wonderful city? Or are they too, like the federal Liberals, tending to want to ignore the elements that are causing the most problem? And we just recently saw Mayor Chow in Toronto, and I know Mayor Chow, and I've worked with her as an MP. But once again, here she is, and dancing at a festival, the Jerk Festival. And, that's fine. And it's good to celebrate. And hey, she's in great shape. She's obviously practiced her dance moves. But literally, while she was dancing on that stage, only a few blocks away, there was a violent demonstration going on, Hamas related, people shrieking the usual slogans, anti-Israel, anti-Semitic slogans in the street, stopping innocent bystanders. And as Mayor Chow danced on one stage, violent protesters with anti-Semitic slogans being shouted and screamed, carrying on just a couple of blocks away. It's time to get these things straightened out. And by the way, we always get reports in Toronto about some of the other parades they allow, for instance, with full nudity. You know what, citizens? It's no sense just getting mad, getting angry, and we want to create a sense of accommodation, and we want to encourage a sense of acceptance of the views of others. But when your views and when your desire for a tranquil city that is law-abiding is not being followed through by city councilors and mayors who are beholden to city administrations, it's time to get out there. Look at who's running. Look at the candidates who are running in your various areas and decide which ones are truly worthy of your support. Along those lines, and the city, you might have seen this in the news just recently, of West Kelowna, kind of close to my heart. I represented that area for a number of years. Their bold mayor and city council has taken the step to add to the list of people who are banning from performing this so-called Christian music worship singer from the United States. I don't know the individual. I don't know what he sings about, but I know that we say we live in a country that's strong and free, or we think we do. And I always hear people talking about how wonderful Canada is, and it is because of all the freedoms we have. But all these things are going on the left side of the equation, the Liberal side, that seem to enhance the ability of the wrong type of actors and going after people because you don't like what their political view is, or maybe what their religious view is. Folks, elections are coming up. Municipal elections are coming up. Get out there and have your say. On the culture front, we usually I usually like to close with a story about culture, kind of a fun one here. The name Dan Livers. Dan Livers is probably not a household name in your home or in your community, but this gentleman just recently fled from the United States, hopped in a kayak and paddled across the river there in Ontario, and he's claiming he needs asylum. He wants refugee status because of the terrible policies that are happening in the US. So it's kind of comical. By the way, the type of agreement that we have between Canada and the US doesn't allow for these asylum claims, because we agree that even though we have political differences, our systems, when it comes to freedom of speech, and when it comes to protection of individual rights, are pretty close together. And so we don't really allow these claims. But this gentleman at 1 in the morning did his paddle across the river and had a hard time finding a police officer who would actually bring him in to listen to his claim for asylum. The good news is, he said, when he was asked what did he do when he got to Canada at 1 in the morning, he said, the first thing I did, he said, I went to Tim Hortons. I needed to have a little pick me up. So he went to Timmie's. Given the fact he's asking for two different areas in which he can claim asylum, I'm guessing he ordered a double double. What do you think? Have a great day, folks.